Hey, 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 welcome to Making the Case for Your Lawyer Dreams. Thus far, this is going to be the fourth day of our series of Making the Case. We have done a phenomenal job of covering a lot of material, and we've had the pleasure of having a number of guests who have been exactly where you are, and they have successfully navigated the process, and they want to make sure and drop some gems to make sure that you guys can do the same. Hey, future lawyers, the week is almost up. I understand that you're tired, but understand that everything that you're doing serves a purpose, and everything that you're doing is ultimately going to take you one step to getting that much closer to fulfilling your lawyer dreams. Today's session, of course, we are going to be talking about the LSAT. We've talked about so many other things, but today is going to be devoted solely to the LSAT. And we're going to have the pleasure of having a guest. Her name is Nyram. This young lady is a beast when it comes to this LSAT, and I want to make sure that you guys can learn from her skills that she found a way to make it happen. Now, understand when we think about the LSAT, oftentimes we think about the financial burden that so many people have to carry in order to find ways to get the score that you need. Well, you know what? There are other ways. And so we're going to talk about those many other ways that you guys could be able to exploit, utilize in order to get the scores that you need to get into law school. So again, as we always do, please tell us where you are in your journey in regards to pursuing your dreams of becoming a lawyer. And also, of course, be sure and fill the chat log box up with questions, and you're going to get a chance to get those questions answered. Do not come away from these sessions without getting your questions answered. The whole purpose is to make sure that you guys get the answers that you need, to get the scores that you need, to find the schools that you need so you guys can get into law school and, of course, then live that lawyer life. All right? So let's go ahead and get nyram on and continue to fill the chat box up with questions. If you got questions about the LSAT, bring them on. She's got the answers. Let's go ahead and get her on. And again, thank you guys for joining us for Making the Case. We've had a phenomenal launch week, and we're going to continue this momentum. If, in fact, you're interested in being a featured guest on Making the Case, send me a DM, and we'll go ahead and send you some information. Hello, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Congratulations on surviving midterms. I know that it's tough, but, hey, it's a part of the journey.
I'm still in the middle of it.
Okay. So let's make sure that we utilize all this time because we know that time is definitely precious. But for today's session, before we get started, please feel free to introduce yourself to the community and let them know what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Nyram. I'm currently a 2L at Temple University in Philadelphia, originally from New York. Before coming to law school, I worked a little bit in public policy. I went to undergrad in New York, upstate New York. I studied political science, English, and communications. And I've kind of always wanted to do law. I've always wanted to be a lawyer. What type of law is still a question. I'm very interested in a lot of things, so we'll see what happens with my career in that sense.
All right.
And today I guess we're talking about the LSAT and I guess different ways to study for it is more my take than, I guess, I'm not going to be doing any questions because I've gotten that out of my mind. I've forgotten how to do the LSAT. But I talk about, like, tactics I use to train for the LSAT. That helped me jump about 10 points from the first time I did the LSAT to the second time I did the LSAT.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things I want you guys to be able to understand about the LSAT, I know that oftentimes a lot of people struggle with the LSAT. It is not a thing that has anything to do with IQ at all. It's actually something that just have to be focused on answering the questions and understanding that it's a whole trick in the process. But we're going to talk about those tips and strategies moving forward. I do want to go ahead and let you guys on some breaking news. Just got announced that 7Sage, which used to provide a lot of free LSAT resources, by the end of November, they're no longer going to be providing those free LSAT resources. So 7Sage.
Oh, that's really upsetting.
Right, exactly, because I know a lot of people utilize a lot of resources out there that are free. You don't have to always get an LSAT prep course, but 7Sage, you have until November 1st. So if I were you, I would try to see if you can go there, possibly copy and paste some of those questions, copy and paste some of those explanations, but you want to make sure that you try to get as much information from that website as possible, because it is definitely a valuable resource. And right now, at this particular moment, it is definitely free 99. And you're right, Sydney, Law School Admissions Council does have a resource called Con Prep Academy, which of course is free 99, that can help you in regards to preparing for the LSAT. But we're going to go ahead. I wanted to make sure that you guys got that news, because what we're going to first start off with our session is talking about different resources that you could use to be able to help prepare for the LSAT. And I know I discovered, Nyram, when I saw her story about Read It and how she utilized Read It to get her LSAT score up. And so I'll go ahead and give her the floor so she can go ahead and tell us about how she used that resource and other resources that she used to get her score to where she needed it to get into Temple.
All right, yeah, so when I was starting my application, I looked on Reddit, which is just an online forum website. You just sign up, you're anonymous, and it has subreddits, which are basically like subcultures, and one of them is our LSAT, which is people who are doing
Oh,
I'll just keep going.
Catch back up. Go ahead.
Okay. So it's just a place dedicated to people, strangers helping each other and asking questions about the LSAT. And then there's our law school admissions, which is, again, just an entire forum about law school admissions. So I was on our LSAT, and it's just, people talking about, the different things that they discovered. Some people would buy the books and photocopy it and send it to people who couldn't afford to buy them. People who had finished the LSAT would be like, hey, I don't want to resell this. I'll ship it to anyone who wants. So it was just a really nice community of people who were sharing resources. Not going to lie, because it's anonymous, some people can be racist, for sure. That's always a risk, but for the most part, people were extremely nice and very, very giving for a bunch of strangers. When I was in undergrad, I was in the LSAT Plus program as a freshman. You could do it up to your senior year in college, and because I did the program, my LSAT was waived. The price for my LSAT was waived, and so I just started sending that to any company. And because I was one of the persons on Reddit was like, usually if your LSAT is waived, other places will either give you a discount or waive the LSAT prep course or something. And a lot of places gave me like a discount, but it's still thousands of dollars, which I couldn't afford. But LSAT Plus, LSAT Max, I believe it's called, gave me their online course for free. I had an iPad, so I just downloaded the app and I got their entire course for free. And at that time, I was commuting an hour to work, so I just prepped for the LSAT on the train ride from home to work and back. And then I also reached out to a bunch of alumni, and I was like, hey, you took the LSAT, do you still have those books?
Okay.
And even though they're a little bit outdated, I still got those books. However, even when you have all the paper material, now you have to know how to actually do the questions. That's the second part. The first part is getting the material. The second part is learning what to do with the material, how to answer the questions. And that's why I'm so sad that 7 Sage is no longer offering free resources, because I use 7 Sage a lot. Their videos on YouTube were their videos on YouTube were what made me really understand the logic games, because they did every single one that was available, and I would do them, and then I'd watch the videos on how they did them, and I'd see where I went wrong. And if you watch enough videos, you could see that how the LSAT recycles the same problems, just uses different names. So I just watched the videos and did the problems, and I went from doing so terribly in the logic games to getting every single one of them right, because I'd gotten so used to the same exact problems. They just twist it a little bit, change the numbers, change how many people, but it's still the same type of table. You just really need to know the different types of tables that they use, mostly. Reading comprehension, I think, is one of the hardest actually to increase in, mostly because it's about like speed, how you read, how quickly you read rather, and then remembering all of those. So it's hard to train for that, other than the advice given is read The Economist or something like that, just to get used to the language. I don't really have any advice other than that, like read newspapers, try to quicken your reading, just do more practices. And then the analytical reasoning is just the same. You just got to keep doing it, and then looking at the YouTube videos, how they explain the problems. I took the LSAT before Khan Academy was free, so I have no idea how that works, but I know how Khan Academy works in general, so I'm really glad that they have that resources, because Khan Academy is very good. I highly suggest everyone use Khan Academy if they can, before thinking about if they want to put up money for an actual course.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things I want you guys to be able to highlight to the people who just joined us, of course, is just making the case for your lawyer dreams. We, of course, have Nyram on the line with us, who, of course, made it happen with the LSAT, found ways to improve her LSAT score, despite the fact that there was not a money tree in her backyard. She found a way still to be able to make her LSAT score become competitive and secure admissions into law school. She's now, of course, at Temple in her second year, taking time, and we appreciate it, to share these gems. Now, again, with the announcement that I made, the 7th stage is going to be dropping its free resources on November 1st, which is 7 days away. However, I encourage you guys to go onto YouTube. 7th stage does provide YouTube videos where they provide a detailed breakdown of LSAT problems, and it can serve as an invaluable resource for you. So I encourage you guys to go and download it. Of course, we can do those, those YouTube downloaders. I use them. You can use them to download all of these videos, all of these materials, to make sure that you can have them at your ready. You could, Nyram, you studied while she was commuting to work for an hour. You have to utilize every bit of time to try to make the LSAT score that you need happen. We're going to talk a little bit more about some other LSAT resources I think that could be extremely beneficial for you. We talked about Khan Academy. However, also, that is free now, and I encourage you guys to really check that out. Also, in the past, we've had a guest on by the name of Steve Swartz. He does LSAT Unplugged, and he, of course, is a very reliable resource. If, in fact, you have questions or problems, you can literally send him a message, email him, and oftentimes he does provide breakdowns on YouTube for free 99. So make sure that you utilize these resources. We are now, of course, in a time and day where there's so many resources out there. At times, we find ourselves no longer having the excuse to say that you don't know. But I want you guys to challenge yourself to find ways to be able to get these answers. One thing specifically that she said is that there's only so many ways that you can reinvent the wheel. And so even though the only thing that they change oftentimes with these LSAT books are the cover, outside of that, a lot of the material is fairly the same. So getting a used LSAT book from somebody who may have graduated before you, or potentially even going to the library. A lot of these resources are available.
Yes.
And I'm sure.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Go to your public library. A lot of them are right in the public library. Take scans. I'd highly recommend the Power Score Bibles. I think I found them very well in explaining. I don't know if we can name names, but I found the Power.
We want to make sure they know everything, so they know where they need to go.
Yeah, I personally found Power Score much better than Kaplan, in my opinion, for everything, for the explanations. Power Score and 7th Stage were probably like the best, much better than Kaplan, I found. But yeah, utilize your public libraries. They have all those resources there for you. You pay taxes, use them.
Right. And guess what? They're also available at the law library as well. I did not know that until I rolled up in the law school, and I was like, dang, what are these LSAT books doing here? So there are resources, there are an abundance of resources out there. However, it's going to require you to take that step of faith and find them. The most convenient thing to do, of course, is to just click a button and buy a course. But one of the things I want you guys to understand is that by simply buying an online course, it's not going to be able to guarantee that you're going to be successful on the LSAT. One of the things that we preach, and I'm sure that Nyram can attest to, is you have to become what we call fluent in LSAT speak, because every type of platform that you use to study for NYRM, the explanations were different, how they answered, how they presented the questions were different. And if in fact you find yourself only specializing only one way that a question is answered, it could pose potential problems on the actual test day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to answer that one person's questions about how important practice tests are. Practice tests are very important. Try to do as many as possible. Try to give yourself one day every week, especially if you're 3 months to the exams, to do a fully timed practice test, just like it will be, so that, because timing is important, not just getting the answers right, but having enough time to read it and then make sure, because if you're just filling in if you do all that time preparing and you don't have enough time to actually read the questions, it's not going to do anything for you. So you need to make sure you're answering the questions within the allotted time. So testing yourself and going through it as quickly as the time allotment is as important. And you can only do that by training for the time period. So try to do one timed test a week. And then I did one time test a week and then two additional practice tests a week. So roughly 3 practice tests every week, going all the way back to the 1990s test to as recent as I could get.
Now, one of the questions I want to ask you, because you were definitely there a whole lot more recently than I was, what was the strategy that you used in regards to helping improve your LSAT score? Because oftentimes the mistake that people make is they take the LSAT one time, they don't like their score, and then they don't know how to study the second time other than just, well, I'm just going to study longer. So what is an effective strategy in regards to preparing for the LSAT that you recommend that these people utilize?
I think I changed a lot of things. I changed literally my environment. I was studying in my room, and then I just realized that, and even for law school, I just realized my room is somewhere I can't study. It's my bedroom, I sleep, I watch TV, but I'm not studying in there. So I got a place on campus. I got like a nook, and that's my office. That's where I do work. And I just stayed there until I got it. So just literally dedicating a literal space that you're saying, this is like my LSAT space, just to also like get your mind mentally there. And shifting the resources that you use. Whatever you use the first time, try something else, because it didn't work for you the first time. It's an allotment of resources. Try something else. If you paid for tutoring and you didn't get a better score, most of the time they will either refund you or let you redo it again if you fall below a certain threshold. So, make sure you get your money's worth if you're not satisfied with the tutoring you paid for. If you didn't pay for tutoring and you still can't afford it, that's fine. There are, again, I would say go to our LSAT, because people do have links to videos and like Google folders of things that they use to help. I'm trying to think. This is such a long time ago. What else did I do? I saw mentors in my school. I was like, hey, I'm struggling with the LSAT. I'm struggling with these specific types of questions. Can you break it down for me? So your professors can be your LSAT tutors, especially if you're at a university that has like political science. There's probably a professor who's a lawyer who would not be nice enough to break down the LSAT to you. So actually go to your professors. That's something I did. I'm trying to think. I took a longer time to study. The first time I took the LSAT, I think I studied for 3 months, and then the second time I studied for almost a year, because I really wanted to get it. You have to really want it, and you have to, like, I would study until 1 a.m. Like, I just drove into it because I wanted a scholarship to law school. Yeah. I didn't want to pay full price, and I'm not paying full price for law school. I wanted to go to a good law school. I'm at a great law school at a scholarship. I had those goals, and it was much, it was worth to me more than anything to do that. So like you have to like, you can't just be like, yeah, I'm studying. Like, no, you have to like really drive for it. But it's okay if you feel like you're plateauing, but just, mark which questions you keep getting wrong.
Right.
Mark which questions you keep getting wrong, and then go to professors and be like, I don't understand why I keep getting lost with this specific question. Or message me on Instagram. I'll try to help you, even though I'm not an LSAT person. One person asked, can you take a year off before applying to school? I did. I took 2 years off from undergrad to law school. And I think you should, even though this is a completely different topic. You don't have to, but I do think you should take a year off before applying to school. Have y'all heard of any major difference we should look out for in regards to the digital test? All the major differences are not coming for another couple of years. I've heard that the logic games are going to be replaced with something else
in 4 years.
In the coming years, but not anytime soon.
Yeah, when it comes down to it.
Yeah, someone else said they were on our LSAT and got the PDFs of all the LSATs. Yeah, that's right. Like, sometimes you can't even afford the textbooks, and someone is kind enough to scan them.
Right.
I mean, be careful with copyright and sharing them in that case. I think, like, for monetary value, obviously you can't sell them. That's illegal. But, yeah, people are nice enough, because when you can't afford it and you can't even afford to take the practice test, it's nice to have someone who will scan the PDF. So I'm glad someone else went on our LSAT and also got the resources I got.
And one of the things that's also great about it is, one thing I loved about the Read It, when I checked out the Read It community, is you can also go through the stream and see some of the other questions that other people have posted. And then other people are trying to provide explanations to help you understand it. And so that's one of the things that I want you guys to understand. You have to be able to have a curiosity about wanting to try to improve your score. I'll tell you the truth. One thing that we can convince ourselves that we're studying hard, we can convince ourselves that we're putting in the work, but the LSAT score is what I call a BS-ometer. It is going to tell you if you're doing it or if you're not. And oftentimes you may be finding yourself putting in the motions, but you want to make sure that you're doing it in an effective manner. Oftentimes when we ask that question specifically, should I take time off? Of course, it's going to be a question that varies based off of each person. But you also have to understand that, do I have enough time to be able to, am I presenting my best self when I take the LSAT at this particular juncture? Am I going to have enough time to be able to do my best if I study within a 3-month period? And everybody's circumstances, of course, is different. But what I encourage you guys to be able to understand is that the only way that you're going to actually improve your LSAT score is having to be honest with yourself. One thing I want to ask you, if you could break down a little bit in regards to when you did a practice test and then you went through and you scored it, how did you alter your study schedule from practice test to practice test?
How did I alter? You mean from the first time I took it
Right.
to the second time I took it, or what do you mean?
Like how you said you took it every week, right? So let's say you took it and you scored it and you saw, okay, this is an issue that I need to work on. How did you adjust your study schedule based off of how you performed on each practice test?
I didn't really adjust my study schedule, mostly because I couldn't. I worked 9 to 5, and then I studied like 6 to 12. In the middle of it, having to commute back to work. So like I didn't really have time to study at any other time. So I didn't like really adjust my schedule, but how I adjusted my studying,
yeah, that's what I meant,
from exam to exam is so when I did the Dawn timed ones, I'd go through them, I'd pick them out, and then I'd look back at the answers at the back of the book. I'd see it's wrong again. Honestly, I'd literally Googled the question. A lot of the times, like, people have done the LSAT for, especially the older questions, people have done it for so long. A lot of the time, someone had explained the question or explained a similar question. So yeah, or like at some point I went to a library and I got the book LSAT for Dummies even, and I used that to explain to myself like a minor thing that I hadn't been thinking about. Yeah, I just like when I got stuck on very specific things, I'd mark them and then I'd put them aside for the end of the week and I'd see how similar each question was, so I'd know, oh, these are the type of logic game questions that I'm not answering correctly. And so I just would redo them. I'd watch the 7-stage videos, figure out what exactly about it is tripping me up. Is it the wording? And then I just redo them, looking at how they did it, and then I'd put it away and then look at those questions 2 weeks later,
Right.
just so that like I could focus on other things, maybe forget about it, and then come back to it, just so that it would also trigger my memory, which would trigger my memory for similar questions, if that makes sense. I hope it's not too convoluted. And then on weekends, then I
Oh,
take
no, I get exactly what you.
yeah, and then on weekends I do the time test. And my big problem is like I wasn't finishing certain sections in time, so that was mostly to speed myself up.
And the reason why I asked that question is because I wanted you guys to be able to understand how flexible you have to be with your time. You have to also make sure and keep a bank of the things that you have to work on. But at times, the mistake that a lot of people make is they say, hold on, I got something wrong. I need to stop. And let's focus on that and not continue to progress. You're going to have to learn how to maintain a balance of continuing to push forward, but also trying to find time to focus on the areas that you need to be able to improve on and just making it a part of your everyday. I know at times that you can find yourself being overwhelmed by just simply looking at a book, but we are now in the 21st century. We now have access to so many other resources that we could utilize to be able to prepare for these LSATs. We, of course, have a lot of podcasts that are now available that could help you. They also, of course, now one of the things that I think is fantastic that a lot of you guys are not utilizing is there are a lot of different apps available that you can download for maybe free or even for a very little cost. I think the least expensive one I saw, the most expensive one I saw was $7.95, which is, is a couple songs that we download without thinking about it as a way for us to be able to try to get in that practice, to get in that work. I just want you guys to understand that you cannot limit your studying to just opening a book, because the circumstances are not going to be there for you where you can spend all your time opening a book. Sometimes you're going to be driving. Sometimes you're going to be working. So you're going to have to find ways to integrate your LSAT prep into your everyday life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say a disclaimer is I think though if you could afford an actual tutor and a course, I do think that will be beneficial because the statistics do show people who do tutoring courses do get better grades. However, I didn't take a course, and I'm still in a great law school with a bunch of people who did pay thousands of dollars to take courses. I just took definitely the harder, the rougher, the grittier route to get to where I am, but I saved a lot of money that I couldn't afford it, but I'm still here with, people who have a lot of money and took the easier route, and we're in the same place, So it's just, I guess it's like two options, You either grind harder than everyone else, or, you make it up for it in money. Either way, or you pay more than everyone else, or you make it up in grit and determination. But either way, you definitely can't slack it. You definitely can't. I mean, there are a few brilliant people that can, and more power to you. But I wasn't that person. I really had to grind for my grade and for my scholarship. So I will you have to choose one of the two. Put a lot of money into it or put a lot of work into it.
Absolutely. And again, what you have to understand is, irregardless of if you pay for a course or not, you're going to have to be able to supplement your LSAT prep. There's no shortcuts. because what the best thing about the course, of course, is it provides you with resources and access to resources that can help you in your prep for the LSAT. However, one of the things you guys may have missed, if in fact you just joined us, that if in fact you have received a waiver from the Law School Admissions Council, you will automatically be able to qualify for a waiver with the LSAT Max Prep. This is information that they do not publicize, which I do not understand why not. But if in fact you qualify for a waiver with Law School Admissions Council, you can get a free LSAT prep course with law school with the LSAT Max. Also, on a sliding scale, I think with Kaplan and Princeton Review, they also offer a type of discount for students who have qualified for the Law School Admissions Council waiver. They will not publicize that information. If in fact you type it into Google, you have to go to page 7 or 8 until you find it, but nevertheless, they do honor it. And so if in fact you have that waiver, I highly encourage you to make sure and get those resources and add it to the bag of all the other resources that you're going to be utilizing to prepare for the exam. Now, one of the things I mentioned before is we talked about Read It, and of course we talked about Khan Academy for LSAT prep. But I also want to tell you guys about some other apps that you can use. It's one called LSAT Games Infinite. And it's an app, I think it's very, very affordable. And it provides a store chest, a practice game of logic games that you can continue to practice. And this is something that I think could be extremely beneficial for you. One of the reasons that I don't understand why this information is not out there, but I encourage you to check out LSAT Games Infinite. And I also encourage you to check out, let's see here, LSAT with Macoosh, which is MCGOOSH. And it provides not only access to questions, but it also provides video and audio explanations. And these are some great resources that's literally something that you can do while you're waiting in line to get your lunch, waiting on the bus for your next stop, or just simply at work, at your desk with that earbud in your ear. So you have to maximize every bit and every second. And there is now technology out there for you to be able to do that while you're working or while you're doing something else. Were there any type of other resources that you use besides Read It and 7 Sage to prepare for the LSAT?
No, just really those two, and then LSAT Max. That's what it's called.
Yes, LSAT.
Right? Yeah, LSAT Max. But for more resources, I cannot emphasize enough going to Reddit and going to our LSAC, because on the Reddit page, they just have this entire list of resources that some I used, some I didn't use, but they have a bunch of resources there that has been shared over the years with that community. So more than anything, I'd recommend going to Reddit, our LSAT, because everything we said is there and even more. And then you have you have an ongoing community of people who are going through the same struggle as you, who keep this conversation going, so it just doesn't end after this live chat. But you'll also it's actually easier to push yourself when you actually see and hear other people's stories of them motivating themselves, because you don't have to, even though it's on the internet, you can see that you're not doing this alone. I think that was also like a great help for me, being with not just being in my own world, but like being in an internet community where everyone is like gunning for the best. Like, no one is deciding like, yeah, I'm just gonna go to law school at full price because my LSAT score is so low. They're like, no, I want a scholarship. I want to be able to afford this. So my goal is to get a 160 because that will give me a full ride. Like, they just keep gunning and gunning and gunning. How do you not burn out after taking 3 tests a week? I think I was lucky. One, I had a really good workplace, and my workplace knew I was taking the LSAT, and so they actually gave me a lighter load at work because they wanted me to advance. But also, it's 3 times a week. There are 7 days in a week, so like Sundays I'd rest. And 1 day a week to rest was honestly pretty fine for me. And I took a couple of hours, but I think, especially after being so disappointed in my first LSAT, there was just nothing I wanted more than like to get this better grade. So I was just really disappointed in myself and motivated enough to like keep going. I made sure I ate well. Definitely, I still exercise. I exercise, I eat well. I can't say that I slept very well, but I did sleep. I did lessen that and slept better towards the exam because I didn't want to fall asleep or anything during the exam. So it was just really motivation. I was just really motivated to do better because I was just disappointed in my first one and was just motivated to, do better and, do right by myself and by my family and everyone who's, looking for, who has brought me up to the stage where I was privileged enough to take the LSAT.
And one of the things I know for me, way back when I took it, just that the reminder of the disappointment. I literally carried my LSAT score report with me everywhere. And so anytime that I thought about getting tired or wanting to quit, I realized that, man, you're not in a place to be tired or quit because you got to get your score up. And oftentimes, it's one of the biggest battles that you're going to have that you start fighting when you are practicing for the LSAT, that you continue to fight once you get into law school. For so many of you guys, and I'm sure Nyram is also can attest to this, college came very easy. We did not have as many challenges when it came to college almost academically. And so this may be the first time that you've encountered something where the same methods that you used to be successful in undergrad, you now have to be able to change it up. And one of the things is that's just a big shift for so many people. And that's the reason why a lot of people struggle. But nevertheless, the sooner you accept that, okay, my way is not going to work, however, I have to find a way to figure out why they got those answers, then that's when the process of you improving your score begins to ultimately happen. When you get your LSAT score back and you seeing that you're repeating the same score again and again, it's because you are not changing up your process. And oftentimes people think that if they spend more time studying, and I made that mistake the first time, they spend more time studying that things are going to automatically cause your score to increase. And oftentimes what it does is it causes your score to go back down. And so I want you guys to be able to understand that you have an abundance of resources out there. You can DM me, you can DM her. You have also these podcasts, you have these YouTube channels, you have all these resources. And I want to make sure you guys understand and read it, that you're not alone and that you can get these questions answered and get the scores that you need. And I think one of the most beneficial things about the Reddit is the fact that you see that you're not the only one struggling, because studying for the LSAT can be a very isolating experience, right? It's just you and your book and your wrong answers. And you can talk to people and they don't understand. They may love you, they care about you, but they can't really help you. And so having that community is something that could be extremely beneficial. Now, one of the things I do want to touch base and encourage you guys who are preparing for the LSAT to do, I want you guys to expose yourself to the digital LSAT. The Law School Admissions Council now provides a resource for you to be able to go and explore the digital LSAT. And even on LSAT Max right now, they have a free digital LSAT trial where you get an opportunity to practice and get a feel for how it works, because you do not want to find yourself on test day never even knowing how this situation works and then sitting there puzzled trying to figure it out and confused when you need to be focusing on getting your questions in and getting the right answers.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't even know how to take the digital LSAT. That sounds crazy to me.
Well, I mean, the thing about it is, I know initially what they just did, I think this is maybe the third time they've done it so far, is the first people who took the digital to LSAT, they allowed them to see their scores because it was so new and make the decision either to cancel their score or to keep their score. And so I want you guys to understand that although we have grown accustomed to opening a book, that you're just going to have to adjust. I know it's going to be different, but nevertheless, you have to learn how to evolve and adjust to the circumstances. Now, one thing I definitely do want to take some time to talk about with you, Nyram, is explain to them about the other platform on Reddit that you use when it came time for you leveraging your situation, leveraging your acceptances to get scholarships, because that was also a valuable resource on Reddit that you spoke of too.
Oh, all right. So I talked about, so after the LSAT, I moved to our law school admissions which is just, yeah, well, when you move from the LSAT and you move to the stage where you're applying for schools, and like it's a lot of people applying for law schools, don't look like you and me and are from privileged backgrounds, and this is an anonymous, again, Reddit is anonymous, so like, they don't need to know who you are, and I think it's interesting to kind of like enter this world of like everyone is so privileged and like, yeah, my dad is a lawyer and he told me this is how to do things, or my brothers are lawyers and they did it this way, and so they're just sharing resources with other people on the internet. I think a lot of people assume people on Reddit are like white men, so they think they're just like sharing with their buddies, and it's so interesting, like the secrets and like the ways people, the hacks that people know through their family members that they share on the internet. Yeah, and like no one in my circle ever knew of these things. So like, one, if you're applying for law school, apply as early as you can because that's when they have the most money. Unless you plan on retaking and intend on getting a better score, because it's not the end-all be-all if you don't apply ahead, but definitely try to apply before March for sure, because by then they had given out a lot of acceptances. Pardon me. By then they've given out a lot of acceptances, and if they accept you, probably the scholarship they give you is probably going to be on the lower end in case the others accept their scholarship. And ask every single school that you apply to for a fee waiver, every single one. It doesn't matter if it's a long shot or not. You don't even have to give a reason. Just say, my emails to everyone was 2 sentences. Hey, I'd like to apply to your school, but applying to law schools are expensive. Please help me. With my to navigate this financial situation by giving me a fee waiver. Something as simple as that. And I think I had like a 95% like success rate. Like, I think the only ones who didn't give me a fee waiver are NYU and Vanderbilt. Like, Cornell gave me one. Yeah, most schools will give you one if you ask, honestly. And some schools don't even have application fees anymore. But
Right.
if they do, definitely 100% ask them, because most of the time they will give you a fee waiver. You don't even have to show anything. And because of this, like, once like I got my acceptances, I would email another school that was similar ranking and in a close location and be like, hey, this school is cheaper or this school is offering me more money, but I would really like to go to your school for XYZ reasons. Can you please increase my scholarship so that I could go to your school? And then you just reiterate the things that you bring, because you're not just asking them for money. You're saying, hey, invest in me. I'll bring all these things to your school. Like, I'm really passionate about coming to your school. Invest in me. You're not saying give me money. You're saying invest in me. Yeah, so like my scholarship from Temple, I increased it by asking them to give me more, very nicely again. So just always ask, because they're never going to rescind your acceptance for asking for more money. Absolutely not. The least they could say is no. Sorry, the most they could say is no, and you're just stuck where you were at the beginning, which is fine. But if you get more money, then you get more money. So always ask. I would say also, sorry, going a little back and forth, in terms of your personal statements, I think you should write all of them. Make sure you write a personal statement. Make sure you write a diversity statement. If there's a community service statement, public service statement, write that. Just make them see that giving you a scholarship is an investment into you doing great things in the community around that school and giving notoriety to that school. But yeah, I think just always ask for a fee waiver, always ask for a scholarship increase, because there's nothing that they could do to hurt you if you ask.
Right. I want to ask you more specific questions. Specifically, who should I email when I'm asking for a waiver? Because, oftentimes they have the general admissions email address, or do you email the direct?
Right. I think for this question, honestly, anyone can DM me, because who I emailed, again, it was on our law school admissions. Someone had put together an Excel sheet of the exact people you should email. So I have that Excel sheet. A buddy of mine from school actually just emailed me asking the same question. I just sent him the Excel sheet, and I was like, here, it's for every single school in the country who exactly you should email. So just DM me, I'll send you that link, and it'll tell you who you should DM and like the probability of the school, or like, because like the Ivy, I know like NYU and Harvard and Columbia, they require you to like show need before they give you a waiver, so it'll point that out. But most schools, it'll be fine if you email the right person. So just DM me, I'll send you that link for sure.
I'm going to be DMing you too, so I can get that link too. But nevertheless,
yeah, no problem.
What I want you guys to be able to understand, this is the value of having access to resources in regards to trying to find ways to improve your chances of getting admitted into law school. And I hope that you guys have really got all this information and realize how much power that you have in regards to trying to change things. I know that oftentimes the biggest struggle is trying to figure out, having to accept that your way is not going to work. Nevertheless, there's resources out here to help you figure out the way that works best for you. Most of your life, you've been able to do things a certain way. Now you got to change things up. The quicker that you get out your feelings and accept that, the quicker things will be able to turn around for you. I encourage you, one thing I say to people is you have 5 senses, so make sure you use all of them. So just limiting your test prep to just looking at a piece of paper, you're really going to be selling yourself short. Last time I checked, most people learn music and most people learn things by listening to things. So make sure that you also utilize that sense as a way to help you be able to get things from practice to perfecting it to understanding it and mastering it. But so just do not limit yourself to literally just opening up a book. Now, we're going to this. We got about 10 more minutes before Nyram gets back to prepping for her midterms. Fill the chat log box up with questions, and we're going to make sure and try to address those as well. But as we continue, one of the things I definitely do want to ask you about is, and I asked all of my guests, is when you have 202 schools, how did you go about specifically identifying the schools to apply to? Because, I mean, oftentimes you got to do that before you even apply, before you even start studying for the LSAT.
So I applied to, I think, except for NYU, I limited my schools to those that gave me free waivers. So, I mean, that was like most of them, so that didn't actually really help. Well, I'm from New York again, so, and I don't like the cold, so anywhere that was too cold, I canceled that out. I don't drive. Anywhere that needed me to drive, I canceled that out. I also thought about myself, because I was like, if I needed to get in law school, if you need to go to all these professional events and they were inaccessible to me because I can't drive and there's no good public transportation, then I'm at a disadvantage. So I also thought about, my personal needs from the community to be able to succeed in, networking, being part of the community around. I think something that people don't think about is how grades are curved. That is extremely important, because I think it's very disadvantageous to go to a school that is curved for you to get lower grades. And the curve is basically like the median of your class has to be like a 2.9. That's harmful to you, because that means most of your class are going to get, sub 3.0 grades, and then it's going to hurt you when you're applying for jobs. and it's not going to be your fault. You could study so hard, but like the curves your grade towards a certain way. So if a school's curve was was lower than a 3.0, I canceled those out. And honestly, what made me choose Temple was one, it was a well-known school. It's a public law school that's top 50 in the nation. So it was also very affordable. Even though I'm an out-of-state student, I pay very little in comparison to law school. I pay very little for my law school because it's a public school. Philadelphia, coming from New York, Philadelphia is a cheap city, and there's a lot of opportunities here. And Temple is a very well-known school within this city. Like, people here love and adore Temple students. So I knew that, just because it wasn't top 14 didn't mean I wasn't going to get the opportunities. I was never a person to look at big law, but like if I wanted to, there's a lot of big law in Philadelphia, and they choose, honestly, Temple students first, because even though there's an Ivy League school right here, UPenn, a lot of the Penn students go to New York. Yeah. And so, as I go to all these events, everyone recognizes, Temple as a great law school. We have one of the best child advocacy programs in the country. And honestly, when I was visiting schools, it also had the most people of color. And I went to, one school gave me a full ride, and I went to visit it. And I was there for maybe like 30-something hours. In the entire town, I saw one Black person. And I was there for several hours. And I was like, yeah, honestly, you could keep this full ride. I'm good. Like, my sanity is more important to me. Like, having a community that, knows my experience, that I could, I don't always have to, like, pretend. That was more important to me. And Temple had, like, not just students of color, but professors of color, lawyers of color all around, that came up to me and talked to me during the acceptance students days. That's how I like chose Temple. But I mean, it was, not gonna lie, it was kind of hard, because I did have I was wrapped up in thinking about ranking, because I did get into higher ranked schools. I did get into a T14, and I mean, they didn't give me as much money. I was like, I'm probably gonna go into public interest, so going to a ranked school is not as important to me. Because I worked before law school, my job offered me like another job right after school, so I wasn't also worried about like how I'm going to be. I'm very confident that I'll be fine once I graduate law school, So I wasn't like, oh, if I go to any other school, I'm not going to get a job. Right. That's not going to happen.
And so
so I just
go ahead. One of the things I want you guys to make sure I emphasize what she's talking about is you have to find an environment that's going to make you feel comfortable. I know if you're transitioning from an HBCU and going to a PWI, which is a predominantly white institution, you want to make sure before you commit to a law school that you go and get a feel for it. And we didn't talk about this, but also a lot of these law schools, they will pay for you to visit their schools. They will reimburse you money, pay it back to you, hotel stay, airport stay, rental, gas, all of that. What you guys have to understand is that you may not realize it now because you're really studying and grinding, but you guys are a commodity. And the higher you get your score, the more of a commodity that you become. And because of that, they are all trying to get you guys into their school. There are very few of us in law schools. And so every law school wants to make sure that the few that do go to their school. And so they are working really hard, and you can use that to your advantage to get money and also make sure that find the right environment that's for you.
Yeah, and I'm not saying, don't try to shoot for the higher ranking schools. Of course not. But, I never, broke a sweat over it, honestly. I knew just being in law school was, for me and my family, like a great achievement in itself, and I was very content in being in a law school that was in the top 50. I will say that be wary of much lower ranked law schools, only because a lot of them are in danger of losing their accreditation, and you don't want to get caught up in that, because then it's a whole thing about you graduating a law school that doesn't have accreditation. Where are you going to use your degree? So you don't necessarily, you could be a great lawyer, you could have a great legal career in a law school that was lower ranked, but just be wary of, like read up on the law schools that you intend to go to. Like if the law school seems like it's in danger of closing down when you're in the middle of your studies, like block that law school. Don't go there, because in the end, you're the one who's paying all this money and you won't get a degree, and that's going to be devastating. So I would think of like rankings that way. But like if you plan to like go to what are the big legal names? Like the giant law firms, then you have to also recognize that some of them won't look at you if you're not in T14.
Right.
So you have to also like know what you want. But some of them will if you're in a very specific community. Like they're in Philadelphia, like again, the giant law firms are here. Like the top, 100 law firms, Morgan Lewis, Skadden, all those big law firms, and they pick Temple students. We're not T14, but again, we're well known in Philadelphia. We're very, if you want big law without, the T14 price tag, go to, a good law school that is very localized in an area that you want to be in. So, and if you want to like go to New York but can't afford a New York law school, go to Philadelphia, go to a big law firm there, and then transfer. There's a lot of ways to, I think, play the game, honestly. Sometimes you have to play the long game, but honestly, that may end up being the better end for you.
Absolutely. Again, I want to thank NYRM. Thank you for taking time from your midterms to drop these gems. I hope you guys wrote all this information down. Of course, this will be available to you in our IG Live. Continue to work hard. NYRM showed us the way. Now it's up to you guys to do the same. Thank you again, NYRM. And to all my future lawyers out there.
Thank you for inviting me.
To all my future lawyers out there, keep grinding. You guys are one step closer to your lawyer dream. Take care, you guys. Talk to you tomorrow.
Good night.